Exodus 22, verse 28 says that you're never to curse a leader. You're never to curse a leader. Say, wow, that's part of the Old Testament, it's part of the law. No, it's part of the New Testament because the Apostle Paul quoted it in the 23rd chapter of Acts. In the 23rd chapter of Acts, in the 5th verse, the Apostle Paul, he got into this kind of emotional exchange. He was taken to court, and really the court was the synagogue and the religious leaders. And one of the religious leaders was coming against Paul and making some false accusations. And Paul spoke up and said, I have a good conscience before God. And this religious leader commanded him to be smitten on the mouth. Now, I'm not sure what that means to you. Smitten on the mouth, it probably looks like this. Watch up here. Like that, like this. I'll guarantee you the Roman soldier standing there holding the chain on the Apostle Paul, he did not do this. He didn't do that. When that religious leader said, smash his face, that Roman soldier said, yes, sir. And he doubled it up and he wound up. And if you study that word smitten, you'll find out that's what happened. He absolutely lamb-blasted him with a roundhouse blow right across the mouth. And Paul responded harshly toward that leader. Now, that leader did that against God's law, contrary to God's word, contrary to the legal law of the day. It was ethically and morally wrong. And Paul looked at him and said, God smite you, you whited wall, for commanding me to be smitten contrary to the law that you stand and judge me by. And one person in that crowd stood up and said, you dare to speak like that to God's high priest? And he immediately repented. He instantaneously repented, took a step back, and quoted that verse. He said, I did not perceive this to be the high priest. Otherwise, I never would have raised my voice. I never would have criticized what he has done, even though it was illegal, even though it was immoral, even though it was unethical, even though it was against God's will, because it was against God's law. He said, I never would have spoke against him if I'd have known that to be God's high priest, for it is written. See, it's never an excuse for you to break God's law just because somebody else did. The ways never justify the means. See, it's not okay for me to strike back because somebody struck on me. I'm still commanded to walk in love. And when he went to criticize a leader, and you'll have to just, in your own situation, you'll have to just kind of turn the pages through your life and find out who's a leader in your life, who's a ruler in your life, who's over you in the Lord. Who would that be? Who would that be in the church setting? Who would that be in your workplace? Who would that be in your marital situation? Who would that be in your family life? Who would that be as a citizen? Most people have 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 different layers of leadership, but everyone has leaders. And we find it in our society. Now listen real carefully, because I'm not going to take sides of the aisle. I'm not going to get on the left and I'm not going to get on the right. I'm just going to tell you that whoever your leaders are, 1 Peter chapter 2 says, it doesn't matter if it's the highest leader in the land, in their case it was the king, or the next level of leadership, which were governors, or the next level of leadership, those who are appointed by him, or the judges, whoever is in a position of leadership. But see, we don't have that in America. We don't have that in America. We have criticism in America. We have critics in America. We have people who think it's okay to call into talk shows and critique and criticize everything that our leaders do or say. And they find an excuse to do it. If Paul was looking for an excuse, he found one, didn't he? He found one. But as soon as it was pointed out, this is the leader of God's people, he just immediately took a step back, repented, said, I never would have said that if I'd have perceived that was God's high priest. See, he didn't have all his robes on and things because they were in Roman court. They didn't come in with all their garb on. They didn't come in with the vestments on and the high priestly robe. He just came in dressed like everyone else, and Paul didn't realize that's who he was talking about. See, you can get away with saying some things when it comes to subordinates. You have a responsibility to critique and judge their performance and their attitude. Say, for instance, you're a parent and you have children. You have a responsibility. You have a responsibility. You may be a foreman or a manager, and someone has placed you in a position as a mentor or as an instructor, and you have a responsibility. But not toward a leader. Never. 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 Now, if we had more time, we would just ratchet back even farther and talk about the original sin and the original rebellion and the original insubordination and the original critiquing of our God by his enemy, and then what that looks like in a human. But save yourself some cursing by not critiquing. Save yourself being cursed by not criticizing. See, Luke, boy, this is like a message in itself, isn't it? You better look onto YouTube. I'm sure this will be there tomorrow. Huh? Okay. See, Luke 6:37 says, judge not, and you won't be judged. Now turn that around. If you judge, you will be judged. Judge not, lest you be judged. Critique not. Criticize not, condemn not, all within that word, lest you be condemned. Forgive and you'll be forgiven. Give and it shall be given to you. Good measure, pressed down, shaken together, and running over. Shall men give into your bosom, for with the same measure that you measure it out, it'll be measured back to you again. Only good measure, pressed down, shaken together, and running over. So it's pretty easy to disagree, with a leader. It's pretty easy to disagree with something a leader does, something a leader says, some decision that a leader makes, Rearrange the chairs, turn the sound up, turn the lights down, stop the song, stand over here, change the service. It's pretty easy to do that. I mean, Pastor, you must disagree with your pastor on some things. No, never. Never let myself go there. Never. Never, ever, ever go there. Never. Well, what if you don't say it? What if you don't say it? Well, Ecclesiastes, that's got a verse that deals with that. Ecclesiastes chapter 11, verse 20 says, don't curse a leader, not even in your thoughts. Because if it's in your thoughts long enough, where's it going to come out? It's going to come out my mouth. It's going to come out my mouth. It's not even in my thoughts. Not even in my thoughts, let alone in my words. Let alone in my words, because it'll come back, and it'll come back faster in that realm than it will any other time. But just so we don't think it's just leaders, then Romans 14 had to be thrown in there, didn't it? Romans chapter 14 says, who are you to judge another man's servant? To his own master he stands and falls. See, he's serving God. Don't criticize him about anything. He's not your servant. He's not your servant. So don't ever do that. Don't ever do that. You just take care of your life. Matthew chapter 7, don't try to pick the splinter, because even if you're right, you curse yourself, and this pastor doesn't want any of you unnecessarily being cursed because of your own words or attitude. But what if they're wrong? What if they are? Before God they stand or fall. He's the judge.